Inyan Rosh Chodesh, to understand the deeper meaning of Rosh Chodesh. So actually, it's coming up now. The first Rosh Chodesh after Tishrei is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, which is going to be Wednesday and Thursday. And this Maimon will give an explanation of what Rosh Chodesh represents and why it's specifically a yontif for women. So there's a lot of introductions here and explanations. We're going to start from page 23. So if anyone is listening online, this is it's a book that's called Feminine Faith and the Hasidic Heritage Series. That's the book we're using. And we're starting with page 23. Lehavin Inyan Rosh Chodesh. To understand what is the Inyan Rosh Chodesh. Now we all know Rosh Chodesh means the first day of the month, beginning of the month. So obviously the question is not just to know what it is technically and literally, but what is the deeper significance of Rosh Chodesh and the fact that it's also called Rosh Chodesh. We know, and this is something which is very common in the Rebbe's Sichos, that you can define something by its name, whether it's a person, whether it's an object, whether it's an animal, whether it's Lehavin the Parsha and the Torah, whether it's any Torah book. The fact that something is given as a name, the name usually defines what really the essence is all about, and all the rest are details. So here too, it's called Rosh Chodesh. And the truth is, in Hebrew, there are other ways of describing the beginning of the month. For example, there's another word that could be used, which is Tchilas HaChodesh, which means the beginning of the month. So naturally, the fact that the name was chosen Rosh Chodesh, which means the head, so of course it means the beginning, but still it's a word that also means the head, has significance. And what is it? It's coming to imply something. Shanik Rosh Chodesh, Shekmei HaRosh, just like the head. Uklol L'Sachayis Adam, that contains the general vitality of a person. Thank you very much. The general vitality of the person is in the head. Thank you. This is something which is explained in detail in Tanya. There's a chapter in Tanya, and toward the end of Tanya, chapter 51, where the Alter Rebbe explains that the neshama gives life to the whole body, to every organ in the body, but the way it happens is that the neshama is first bound in the brain, in the head, in the brain, and from the brain it's distributed to the rest of the body. It goes to the heart and all the organs in the body. So the head, in a sense, initially it includes all the different organs, the vitality to all the organs in it. So just like the head contains that general chayas. By the way, I don't have the other booklet here with me. So as we go along, I'll just point out certain words that you should mark down as Hasidic terms. And then later, when we do the review, we'll go over it. So these two words, Klolos HaChayis, is a Hasidic term that's used very often. And again, it means the general life flow, the general vitality. So Kain Rosh Chodesh V'Akeilot Klolos HaChayis Shakol HaChodesh Kulin. That means that Hashem gives life to the world and to every single person in the world all year long. But now we're talking about each month individually. That every person, every animal, everything that exists, whether it's from the plant kingdom, whether it's an animate kingdom, whether the kingdom of life of that, whether it's birds or it's insects, everything in the world, every detail in the world gets vitality from Hashem. And that vitality comes from Hashem to each month, first in a general way, and then it gets distributed to each detail. When we were learning about Rosh Hashanah, so look at the next paragraph, it's like Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, just like Rosh Hashanah is also referred to as the beginning of the year, but the Hebrew word that's chosen very precise. It's called Rosh, the head of the year. You can take two and give one to Rivka the 100. Yeah, the head of the year. Why? Because it's Kolos Achayas Kol Hashanah is the general life force and life flow and vitality for the whole year, which means the way we explained Rosh Hashanah before we approach Rosh Hashanah was the idea that it's not only the day that Hashem decides what's going to happen every day of the year, but actually the life force that's going to give life to everything that's going to happen throughout the year. That life flow and that life force is sort of manifest from Hashem. It's released from Hashem on Rosh Hashanah in a general way. And then after that, it starts being distributed each day to each person, to each item, to each object, to each detail in creation. like the mashal, even though of course it's a general mashal, that every single home has water. When you turn on the faucet, you have water flowing, but the water is coming from a general place. There's a reservoir somewhere, and from that reservoir, the water gets to me. But how does it get to me? So first, in the reservoir, all the water is there. The water that's going to end up in my house, in your house, and everybody's house, and every building. But first, it's all in one place, that reservoir. And then there are pipes that start distributing the water to different neighbors, to different areas, to different blocks, to different homes, to different floors. These are the details. So on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem manifests of himself, expresses of himself, all the vitality for everything that's going to happen for the next, in this year, 354 days. And then each day is delivered to a specific detail in creation, which is, of course, infinite. So just like it happens with Rosh Hashanah, the same thing happens with each month. Kein Rosh Chodesh, Uklolus Chayes Kol HaChodesh. That's the general life flow of the whole month. Shekel Chayes Klolius Shel Shloshim Yom. B'tzarech Lehavin Inyan, and we need to understand what does that mean. So that means that the way Hashem, the order, the way Hashem gives life to the world is first everything is very general for the whole year, and then it gets delivered to sort of more general stations. There are 12 months, so each month first it gets delivered on one day everything that's supposed to happen this next month, and then throughout the days of the month, that chayas, that vitality flows to each person and to each detail in creation accordingly to what it needs. So everything we have, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's this bracha or another bracha, everything is a result of that vitality. But first, it's there in a general way, and then it goes down to detail. So that means there's one general way for the whole year, and then there's another general way for each month. So first, understand what is this all about? Why? Why is it this sort of system? The Gam Tzarech Lehavin, another thing you need to understand, but Ma Rosh Chodesh Yom Tov Shel Noshim. Why is Rosh Chodesh considered a Yom Tov specifically for women? That women observe Rosh Chodesh more than the men. And in the notes here, they bring the sources that where it's brought down that women will observe this Yom Tov more than the men, and certain things that women don't do on Rosh Chodesh, like work that's specifically related to women, and that means that this is a Yom Tov which is for the women specifically. The reason is brought down in the Medrash. This is because when after the Torah was given, we know that the Jewish people committed a sin which is considered the greatest sin ever committed in history, and that is that they worship the golden calf. And the reason why that's the greatest sin is because of the circumstances. They just went out of Mitzrayim. They just saw Hashem's presence and kindness to them like it was never seen before and never was seen again until Mashiach comes. And Hashem took them out by bringing the 10 plagues on the Egyptians, and then the splitting of the sea, and the man falling from Shemayim, and Hashem made them defeat the Amalekim, and then they got the Torah. Imagine, it's after the Torah was given, and they saw all those things. And it's like, the Medrash gives the example, it's like a woman who just got married, she's still standing under the chuppah, and God forbid, in such a time, to commit adultery, and to go and worship an idol. So the men were ready to do it, but they asked the women to give their jewelry, so from that gold and silver they can make a golden calf, they refused. So they were stronger than the men in their emunah. They believed that Moshe would be coming back. So because they didn't give it, the schar zeh, as a reward to that, Hashem gave them a reward. And what is the reward? That they would have this holiday of Rosh Chodesh. It would be their yontiv more than the men's yontiv. So, of course, one question is going to be why Rosh Chodesh? Hashem could have given any other mitzvah or any other thing as a reward. Why did he choose Rosh Chodesh? There must be a relationship between Rosh Chodesh and not worshiping the golden calf. How's that connected? But he asked another question, in a way, even a stronger question. Not only that Rosh Chodesh, why is Rosh Chodesh chosen over other mitzvahs? Rosh Chodesh seems to be the one thing that you would think is not appropriate to be the mitzvah for the women. Why not? On the surface, the neged mashanoshim turim in mitzvahs aseh shazman groma. The principle is in halacha, women are exempt from positive commandments that are time bound. That's the general rule. That because a woman has her shlichus to provide for the family, when you have such a shlichus, you can't be time bound, that you must do this in this time and that time. You can't restrict yourself to time, and therefore they're not obligated to observe mitzvahs that are time bound. That's called, this is also a term, it's not a Hasidic term, but it's a term in halacha. Mitzvah sasei, positive commandment, shazman grama, that is dependent on time or time bound. Rosh Chodesh, who told it is man. Rosh Chodesh is one of the things that are, of course, also time bound. You don't do that every day. It's only the first day of the month when there's a new moon, and then you have to observe Rosh Chodesh. So then the question is, why why is it that women who are generally pturim midover hatolib bizman, they're exempt from mitzvahs that are time bound? What does Hashem go and do when He says, "I'm giving you Rosh Chodesh hatolib bizman yosim anoshim"? They're getting a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is for them more than the men. Men are obligated to all time-bound mitzvahs. They're not so strongly connected to Rosh Chodesh. Women who are exempt from time-bound mitzvahs, to them Hashem says, keep the mitzvah Rosh Chodesh in a very strong way. So it means that not only we don't understand why this was chosen, but this seems to be not consistent with the shlichus and the avodah of a woman. Here in the parentheses, he's asking a question. Now, it's a question on the question. The question was that Rosh Chodesh is time-bound. So there's a possibility to say, no, it's not time-bound. Because right now, it is time-bound. There's a calendar, and we know every 29, 30 days is Rosh Chodesh. But initially, the way Rosh Chodesh was actually established according to Torah was not based on any time and any calendar. They would wait until they saw the moon as the birth of the new moon. And once two witnesses came and said, we saw the birth of the new moon, then that day was declared as Rosh Chodesh. That means it's not connected on time, it's connected on an incident that we see a new month. But it's not by the calendar. So he says, the fact that they used to sanctify the new moon based on Re'iyah means based on what they saw. It appears to be that it's not dependent on time. So he says, no, that's not really correct. Why not? Although you do it, it's known, Mashakos the Mishnah, it's written in the Mishnah, Shoyagam Alpi Cheshbon, that they also calculated things based on astronomy, to figure out when the new moon would come. Like right now, it's a calculation. We already know in advance for the next who knows how many years when would be the new moon based on our calculations, the way the order of nature goes. They used to do that then also. But nevertheless, they needed witnesses to come and say, okay, we actually saw the moon on this date. And even then, they already had the calculations were really the basis. And even now that we don't go by what we see, because we don't do that anymore, so it means now we go according to the calculations when that time will come. And in those days, they went according to the calculations. So really, there was always two things. They would base it on the calculations and base it on witnesses to come. The fact that the witnesses came and said, we saw a new moon, they would be able to tell them, no, based on the calculations, it's no, you're lying. It couldn't be that you saw it now. So they did go by the calculations. And therefore, it is something which is time bound. When that time comes around, then it's Rosh Chodesh. So it says, in order to understand what is the in order to understand properly why the Rosh Chodesh mitzvah is the reward for not worshiping the idol, the golden calf, the Egel Azov, we need to understand what was the sin of the Egel Azov. If we understand what was the sin of Egel Azov, then we'll also understand why Rosh Chodesh is the tikkun, is the reward for Egel Azov. Yuvim behegdim kolos inyan ma'isa egel. Let's first understand the whole story of worshiping the Egel Azov. She'amru erev rav. So first of all, it says in Rashi and Chumash, we made copies here. Let me give this out. Okay, let me give this out, and we'll find what we're looking for in a second. Somebody want to give this out for me? Thank you. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know why, but it looks like I'm missing one copy. Okay. Okay, so we'll just do it from the book. It says that first of all, we know that this Avera, the Egel Azov, even though the Yidden did violate it, they also worshiped the golden calf, but really they were misled by the Erev Rav. What's the Erev Rav? So Rashi explains in Chumash that when Moshe Rabbeinu went with the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, there were a lot of the Egyptians that said they saw the greatness of what's going on of the Yidden. So they said that they too want to go out with the Yidden. They want to be Jewish. They want to convert, become Jews, and be part of this. So there's one page actually missing. So the Moshe Rabbeinu took them in, and they're called Erev Rav, the multitude of Egyptians that were mixed. They were part of the Jewish nation, but they were the ones, unfortunately, they were the ones who incited everybody else against believing in Moshe and to believe that they should worship a golden calf, the Erev Rav. And what happened? So it says, but yeah, this is the pasuk I wanted to give you, but I don't have it. This didn't come out in the copies. But yeah, but look over here, but that Moshe was delayed and he didn't come back. And therefore and also it's the Maisa Sutton. The Sutton, his plan succeeded. This is the Sutton orchestrated the whole thing. In fact, the Sutton made an image appear. It got very dark, and he made an image appear as if Moshe Rabbeinu was in a bed. And therefore, it appeared to them as if Moshe died. And if Moshe died, we need a new leader. They said, this is your God that took you out of Egypt. So this pasuk should be here in what you have there. So look at I think it's the first page that you have.
Page you're missing?
What?
Is the page you're missing?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's a bunch, it's all of,
All in one. Okay.
you know?
Yeah. So I have my copy. Okay, so look on top of the first page, which is where it says they said this man Moshe, like Rashi writes, Satan showed them something resembling Moshe being carried in the air, high above in the sky, as if he's no longer alive. He brought us out of the land of Egypt, which means he directed us the way we should go out from Egypt. Now we need gods who will go before us instead of Moshe. That's what they said. And they didn't listen to them. They took over their gold and silver, and they accepted what they said. But the truth is, Zehu be'emes pili ploys. This is really astounding. So hard to believe. How could this be? The koshkin al dur deya. These two words, dur deya, is also a term you can underline. It's in the Zohar. The Zohar says that the generation that was in the desert, they were called the generation of knowledge, which means the knowledge and the experience that they had with Hashem, no generation in the world ever had. They saw Hashem when the sea split. They saw Hashem when the Torah was given. They heard Hashem's voice. No one else experienced that. So therefore, in a certain way, they're so much more superior to any other generation. And they should think such nonsense. She'egel Azov, that this golden calf, Gashmi, that was made out of something which is inanimate, piece of gold, that should be a god. And they should believe that this is the one that really took them out of Egypt. Which means, this is just total nonsense. And you're talking about people that were on a very high level, and they saw godliness, and they were on a very high level in terms of their knowledge, so they were smart. How could they accept such foolishness? Shachush makrishay, their own experience should have refuted all these things. They saw with their eyes that there was no such thing as a golden calf when they went out of Mitzrayim. And what if Moshe would have come on time? If Moshe Rabbeinu would have appeared there, there's no way that such nonsense could have been accepted by them to think that not Moshe, but a golden calf took us out of Egypt. Because they made a mistake. It was a cloudy day. So again, when you look in this paper, you'll see what Rashi says, that the reason why they made the mistake was because it was a cloudy day. So one opinion says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to Shemaim, he told them he'd be back in 40 days. So they understood 40 days means exactly from hour to hour. He left in the afternoon. He'll be back in the afternoon. But of course, it was cloudy. It was very dark. And because it was so dark, they thought it's the night already. That means he didn't come back precisely as he said. And therefore, they said he's not coming back. According to their mistake, he's late. It's not the time that he said. Only then, later out, there was even a possibility for the Erev Rav, the Fatesam, to convince them other than the truth. The Tzliach Maisa Satan, and the work of the Satan succeeded, that he actually made a golden calf. It's totally not understood. If you look with your eyes, the whole thing, just because it became late for a few hours, made them change and understand it wasn't Moshe, it was really a calf, a golden calf that took us out of Egypt. They just created the golden calf. It didn't exist before. What kind of nonsense is that? How could they believe such a thing? So you'll see in the notes, there's actually two opinions. What was their mistake? One opinion was that they thought it was night already, and therefore Moshe didn't come exactly when he was supposed to come. And the other opinion was that Moshe Rabbeinu, they knew that it was daytime, but they thought he has to come back precisely the hour that he left. To be precise, 40 days from hour to hour. But really, those hours in the daytime didn't count. We start counting our days from the night. So that's where their mistake was. But either way, how does it, just because the things didn't work out exactly those hours, they already were totally transformed and totally turned around to believe such nonsense. So obviously there's something deeper here also. It's not just a bunch of stupid people decided, okay, let's worship a piece of wood, let's worship a piece of gold. Well, Inyan. So the Inyan is as follows. Can I give out this sheet? Who's Shira? Did I bother you? Sorry. When Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paro, and he said to him, you have to let the Jewish people go. Who said so? Hashem. Number two, look on number 2 on this page. This is Shmos. This is the story of Moshe coming to Paro. What was Paro's response? I'm sorry, I made 10 copies. I'm very happy to see more people than 10, but I didn't know that we would have the merit to have more than 10. So if you can look on with someone sitting next to you. So the Pasuk Beis, this is Paro's response. And Paro said, Mi Hashem Asher Eshma B'Kayla. Who is Hashem that I should listen to him? The Shalech HaSisol, to let the Jewish people leave. Lo Yadaitis Hashem. I don't know Hashem. And therefore I will not allow the Jewish people to live. Like this God that you're giving me a message from him, I don't recognize him. I don't even know who he is. There's a very interesting mashal that the Medrash gives, that somebody was once looking for a Kohen, a certain person, and he happened to be a Kohen, and he needed to find him. So where did he go look for him? He went to look for him in the cemetery. Where's a place where you won't find a Kohen ever? Is in a cemetery, because he's not allowed to go to a cemetery. So what are you going to look for a Kohen in a cemetery? What's the mashal? Paro had books of different gods. He opened up his book, this God, that God, another God, and said, I don't see your God here anywhere. He said, you go to a cemetery, you expect to find our God in your cemetery. That's the simple meaning. The Hasidic emphasis here is on the word Yud Kei Vavkin. It says, Mi Havaya. We know Hashem has different names. What he was saying was, I don't know Havaya. That name of Hashem, I don't recognize. I recognize a creator. In other words, he's going to bring out that Paro also agreed and accepted that Hashem created the world. But he had an issue with the name Havaya. That is something which he had no recognition, and he did not accept. What is the difference? Let's look inside. The main mistake of Pari. In other words, what was the area where Pari was denying was not the king of Egypt? It was me Havaya. Who is Havaya? Sheshma B'Kerlin. And he also said, Lo Yedaite Havaya. I don't know this Havaya. And that's why I won't send the Jewish people out of Egypt. But there is the Gam Sharia from Bamuna. The same is also with many others who are also people that they are heretics, they deny, they don't have Amuna. Eina Inyan doesn't mean Shemakhishin Bamitis Imotzim Mamash. Doesn't necessarily mean they don't accept and they don't believe that God exists. Ikulam Yoidim. The truth is everybody knows that he exists. He created everything that exists. And he's eternal. Like it says, the sun, like the sun comes from the east, and Gadol Shmi Bagoya, my name is big amongst all the nations of the world. All places they burn incense, in other words, for Hashem. Also in the words of our sages, that even the non-Jews, when they talk about Hashem, they call him Elakad Elakaya, the God of all gods. It's also in Tehillim. We say this in davening. There's one part of davening which has the 26 times Ki La'olam Chazdei, and one of them is Hoidu Le'Elokei Olakim, which means we're saying praise Hashem, who's the God of all superior beings, which means all the angels, that he is the God of all these angels. In other words, just like we know that according to Torah, there are angels that Hashem designated. One angel is called the angel of fire. Another angel is called the angels in charge of water. For example, Gabriel is the angel that's in charge of fire. Michael is the angel that's in charge of water. But then there are also angels for every little thing that's happening in the world, that each angel is in charge for another thing. In fact, you might remember from other sources where it says there isn't a blade of grass that doesn't have an angel that's in charge of that blade of grass growing. So even a blade of grass has an angel. Certainly every person has an angel. Every animal has an angel. Every tree has an angel. Everything in the world has an angel. And these angels are making these things happen. So those who don't believe in Hashem, it doesn't mean they don't believe Hashem exists. They don't believe that everything is happening by Hashem. They believe that Hashem created angels or created certain beings up there and gave them the strength and gave them and charged them with the responsibility to take care of certain things. And they're the ones who sort of run the show. That's the way they look at it. And that's called Alakad Alakaya, that Hashem is the God of all the gods. There are gods. So this mistake is based on what it says in the pasuk. Ozav Havayas Haaretz. There's a pasuk where it says that the non-Jews say Hashem abandoned the earth. The Adamazolas B'Sarim El Yoinim, in the hands of the constellations and the superior ministering angels. So even they say he abandoned the earth, which means they agree and they accept and they believe that Hashem created the earth. He created the world. But after he created the world, he sort of gave it over. Now there's someone else who's sort of in charge. Of course, Hashem is the main balabas. He's the one who's in charge of everything. And he can change things if he wants to. But generally speaking, he gave it over to them and they should run it the way they want. That's called avodah zarah. That's idol worship. To attribute that there are certain beings that they have independent choice to do what they want and how they want it. So Nasalem HaKoyach, Hashem, they believe that Hashem gave them the power, gave them the authority. Shiyu heim hamanigim ha'aretz, they should run this world, k'fir tzeinam, according to their will, b'abas nafshem, in the way they desire. And they believe that Hashem has no part of this. Now, why would they believe such a belief? And they believe that God created the world. Why would it bother them to believe He created the world and He's running the world? Is this also just pure nonsense, or they had some sort of a a logical reason for this, an intellectual reason to believe this. Yes, they were philosophers and they had an intellectual reason to believe this. What was their reason? They said, Ki Hashem is so much higher. They believed in Hashem. In fact, they believe that Hashem is who He is, so infinite, and He created this world, and no one compares to Him. But because they believe that Hashem, they exalted Hashem in such greatness that they said to themselves that He's much higher than Akshama and Nasa Pnei Adam, and then all the physical things that are done on this world. This is actually almost like a disgrace. And you're degrading Hashem by saying that He's associated with what's going on here on earth. In other words, if you have a person who is an adult and he's sitting and playing with dolls, it would be embarrassing. For the most part, okay? For most people. Why was it embarrassing? You're an adult. You don't have brain. You should be someplace else. If you're playing with little toys and things that are nonsense, or playing with a banana peel that's swinging in the air, and look at this person, there's something wrong with him. To them, the physical world is insignificantly, it has no significance in comparison to the spiritual worlds. So they said Hashem is in the spiritual world, He's in the highest places, and to tell me that He's involved, whether I should have a hat or not have a hat, whether I should have a job or not have a job, or whether when I wash my hands, if it's going to become wash till here, or I wash it only till here, it's not good enough. That's degrading Him. That's really you're putting down Hashem by saying that He's interested in this narishkeit, this nonsense. So it almost appears like, oh, they're giving Hashem much more credit than we do, and therefore they believe that Ozav Oisam Yad Asarim. Hashem said, okay, I'm giving this over to these angels, or these forces that I have up here in this spiritual world. They'll be in charge of these little things, and Hashem is removed from it. And that's why they said Hashem abandoned the world. Of course, the end result is, what do they say? Therefore, we can do whatever we want. We can kill, we can steal, we can. That's the outcome. So we know right away where this is going. But what do we believe? So we're going to explain. We'll have to wait till we'll do this tomorrow. He's going to explain that actually it appears on the surface that they're attributing much more greatness to Hashem than we are, because we say that it's okay that Hashem should be occupied and interested in the physical world, and they say no, Hashem is so great that it would be a disgrace or degrading for Him to do that. We're going to learn later that the fact that they're saying that it's more appropriate for Hashem to be involved with spiritual creations than with the physical world, they are limiting Hashem. When we say that Hashem is infinite, because He's infinite, the heaven, the earth, the higher creation, the lower creation, it's all equal to Him. It makes no difference. And therefore, their whole premise is false. But this is the issue. The issue is it right to say that this Hashem, who's infinite, is involved with and is interested and has a desire for things to be a certain way here in this physical world? Okay, to be continued. Thank you. Yeah, maybe you can give me back the sheets and I'll make it into a little booklet. Let's see if it's not working this way. Too much distribution of sheets and too much disturbances. We'll make a packet out of it, easy to find. Thank you. Thank you.
כאילו לא הבינו שהשם כאילו מתעסק ברמה הגשמית. הם לא האמינו שהשם מתעסק ברמה הגשמית.
כן.
אבל מה, כי הם אמרו שלא אכפת לו מהדברים הקטנים?
הגשנו את זה יותר מדי נמוך, הוא יתעסק בזה.
כן, אבל גם אני לפעמים חושבת שכאילו יש הרבה דברים קטנים שהשם כאילו לא, נגיד סתם דוגמה, אורך של חצאית, או דברים כאילו זה, שאני אומרת לעצמי, אוקיי, השם לא מתעסק בדברים האלה. מתעסק יותר בפנימיות של הבן אדם. זה לא נכון? אבל למה שהדברים הקטנים האלה כאילו יהיה חשובים לו?
כנראה שזה לא משחק באמת, מה שאנחנו עושים.
אוקיי, אבל אני לא יודעת. כאילו נגיד, לא יודעת, הדברים, המצוות, כאילו, נכון, צריך לקיים מצוות, אבל כל הדברים האלה גם חשובים לו?
למה הוא ברא, אם זה לא חשוב. או מה שהוא ברא, כנראה שיש בזה כוונה, ויש בזה מטרה, אז הוא ברא אילנות, הוא ברא עשבים, הוא ברא בעלי חיים מסביבים.
אז כל המצוות חשובות לו גם, כאילו, המצוות הקטנות.
כן.
אוקיי, אבל אז זה נהיה קשה, כי אז כאילו יש מלא מצוות שצריך לעשות. הרבה יותר קל לחשוב שכאילו, אוקיי, השם לא מתעסק בדברים הקטנים האלה.
לא כל מה שיותר קל, זה נכון.
אוקיי.